Welcome back to the Visually Hidden Selects podcast, episode 45. This month's selection was Raiders of the Lost Ark, aka Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, aka Indiana Jones Part 1. And if you're not familiar with it, 1981, directed by Steven Spielberg, starring, of course, Harrison Ford, Karen Allen, Paul Freeman, John Rhys-Davies. Everybody that I mentioned in the VHS video are still in the movie. So if you haven't seen the VHS, please go check it out on the YouTube channel. Subscribe so you don't miss any future selections, and enjoy the podcast with us. So one thing that I wanted to say in the video that I didn't want to spoil, because I try to make them spoiler free for everyone, I really kind of almost go out of my way to keep them spoiler free because I want people to experience it, you know, like I don't want to like drop stuff in. Even when I edit, like I try not to use clips from like the last act of the movie unless they're like very cryptic or out of context. Like I try not to show any real significant plot points in the film. But one thing that really struck me as I was preparing the VHS, I was rewatching the film and just making my notes. And yes, Indiana Jones is the hero, but he kills a lot of people. He is a fucking mass murderer. If you like really look at the character in just this one movie, Indiana Jones kills 13 people. Some of them he straight up shoots in the head. You know, like he just doesn't care about life. And you know, it's cool. It's cool. Marion Ravenwood herself, little damsel in distress, kills 9 people in this movie. So like I said, she's the only one who can really keep up with Indiana Jones when you get right down to it. They belong together, in my opinion. They are natural born killers.
There you go.
I think we have an infringement issue here.
They have astounding body counts.
Well, yeah, I was like, wow, yeah, he's really, because you know when you watch the movie and you grow up with it, you know, it almost kind of becomes background, right? But like when you sit down and like look at it like critically, it's like, all right, I'm speaking up for this movie now, so I gotta have all my ducks in a row. And I'm watching it, I'm like, holy shit, he just fucking blew that guy's brains out. And then he crashed the truck and blew it up with whoever else was in the back, you know? Like, yeah. It's a wild ride. It's a wild ride.
He plays for keeps, man.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't pull any punches, even when he pulls his punches. But that was something to me that kind of stood out on this rewatch of this revisit to the series. And I don't know. I mean, I guess, and it doesn't change it for me. Clearly, I love the film. I'm going to keep loving the film. I'm going to show it to anybody who will sit down and watch it with me and talk highly of it forever. But I just find it a little bit funny that, yeah, like he's the hero, but he's like killing people left, right, and center. And it's not even officially wartime, which, you know, is a different story when it comes to killing Nazis. Like, it's a fair game, but we might watch it tomorrow.
I didn't realize that, but now you said it. Yeah, it's true. And when you think about it, there is also one of the most main characters almost dying in the first episode. Like when you think Marion is dead. Yeah, it's true that it's quite violent for kids when you think about it. And I always thought that Indiana Jones was for kids. No, maybe not for kids, for teenagers. And yeah, it's quite violent, but I didn't realize before you said it. So,
but it's done in a tasteful way. You know, like it's blood sprayed. You don't see him like getting hacked to pieces, really. Or,
yeah,
you know what I mean. But also, it's like yeah. And when you think about it, like you said, we grew up with it, so it's commonplace. It's a given, right?
But not everybody grew up with that, because I didn't know this movie before. I mean, I knew the title of it, of course. I know it was Harrison Ford, but that's about it. That's all. And I know it was an action movie. But to be frank with you, I didn't know it was a Steven Spielberg movie. So you're gonna judge me now. But
oh wow,
yeah. So
No, I'm just wow.
Yeah. So and I didn't know that there were 5 movies. So I tackled an Indiana Jones marathon to prepare this podcast. In less than 48 hours, I watched the 5 movies.
That was probably the best 48 hours of your life.
I wouldn't say that. But interesting. Because to be frank, also, I didn't know much about Harrison Ford. Um, there is, of course, a movie with Jared Leto and a movie with Brad Pitt that I saw, and I love those movies. So Blade Runner
Of course.
and I think you called it The Devil Own or something like that. The movie, Ennemi rapproché in French. Yeah.
The Devil's Own.
But and I always thought that this actor has how to say that, a capacity for sympathy. It's I watched many interviews of Harrison Ford, and yeah, this guy is a funny guy. You want to know him, you want to hang out with him. So seeing him in Indiana Jones, it makes sense. I think it's a very good cast because he's someone you want to spend time with, and he can kill anybody. I don't care. He's still sympathetic.
It's really kind of fascinating to me that you have made it this far and not seen even one of these films by chance on television or with a friend or anything, because I think I speak for Steve and I, like, we grew up with them. They were like regular viewing, and of course the original trilogy, the first 3 films throughout the 1980s. I mean, if one wasn't in the theater, the other one was on television, and if it wasn't on cable, it was on Channel 11, WPIX. On a Sunday afternoon, you could just hang out with Dr. Jones and go on a little adventure, whether it was, in Egypt or in India or, in Germany or whatever. Like, he gets around, and so is a kind of a gateway. But I know that when I was a kid, this film, Raiders of the Lost Ark, it kind of eluded me a little bit because Temple of Doom was out and then Last Crusade came out. So those two were always on TV a lot. Raiders, by that point, was like a few years old, and it's the first one. So they weren't playing that one as much as the newer ones. And so I had seen parts of it, but I don't remember actually sitting down and watching this movie until I was in like 7th grade. I got my own copy on VHS, and after that, it was like I didn't know how I got that far in life without it. You know what I mean? It was one of those things where it's like this. I just, all I want to do is watch this movie from now on. Like, it's very addicting because of, I think, a lot of the things I talked about in the video in the VHS. But yeah, the story, like, it just keeps going and keeps unfolding, and it never lets up. And if it does let up, it's short lived. Like, there's not a dull moment, and it's just kind of endlessly rewatchable. It's one of those films, like, it just has like this, somehow it has captured this like magic of entertainment that fires on all cylinders every time. I can't even really say that about the other sequels, but in the VHS, I did ask the audience, and I am curious, what's your favorite Indiana Jones film? Because they're all pretty good in their own way, some more so than others, but I personally love this one. But I'm curious, Anne, you just watched all 5, so they're all really fresh in your mind. Was there one that stuck out to you as like, that's my favorite? I like what they did with that one the most.
I like the first one, of course, because that explains everything, and I like the character development in it. But I didn't think it was the funniest one. And weirdly, I like the fun in the second opus. And the one I love the most, I think it's the third one, because you see the father, and I think it's really interesting with Sean Connery, the relationship between the two actors and the two characters. So yeah, maybe my favorite one would be the third one. Yeah,
he is as human as the next man.
The first 3 are one of the hardest ones for me to choose. Like, what's my favorite? But I think, gun to my head, I think it's Last Crusade.
Yeah, a lot of people go for Last Crusade. A lot of people consider Last Crusade to be like the top.
Yeah,
Like the peak of Mount Jones is The Last Crusade for a lot of people. And I get that. I understand it. It's not beyond me. But for me, it's really like to what Anne said a moment ago. It's like this one just everybody's developed nicely. They're introduced nicely. And by the time you get to three, it's like because the quality was maintained, I think that's why three goes
Yeah.
over so well because you already know Sala. You already know Indiana Jones. You already know Marcus.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I love how, you get to see Indiana Jones kind of become Indiana Jones with that opening sequence with River Phoenix.
Yeah.
Not enough good things could be said about him and Sean Connery and that dynamic. Um, there's also nice moments there's some nice moments in every film. Um, even though we know we're talking about Raiders, but yeah, this is one of those franchises from back when we were kids where when I was really small, they were always on. Either my
Yeah.
grandfather was watching them, or my parents were watching them, or they were on WPIX. And for a good portion of time, I had no idea what movie was what.
Yeah.
But then as I got into my teenage years, I sat there and I really started to, okay, this is this movie, that, and I started to put things together in my head and figure out what was what. And yeah, so they've always been there. I love this movie. This, like you said, you can't. There's so many great things you could say about it. Where do you even begin? Um, but talk about an iconic character, with an iconic look, an iconic theme, stuff you covered in the VHS, um, and the inspiration that I think it lays down is kind of overlooked in a certain sense. Like people don't realize.
I think they do, but they don't. Yeah, it's a weird thing where like Indiana Jones is so embedded not only into like our popular culture, but just our like our civilization in
Hmm.
a weird like way. Because yeah, like he's an archaeologist and like he's gonna span time like cinematic history. Like it's just wild, but yeah, like what they were able to do with the character. And then yeah, even like I mentioned, yeah, the you see somebody in a fedora or a brown bomber jacket, it's like, yeah, that's Indiana Jones. Like it overshadows like everything, like the ripple effect, whether it's homage or parody or whatever, inspiration, it's like you see that and it's Indiana Jones.
Hmm.
You can't really say that about a lot of things. Like there's usually something is derivative of something else,
Yeah.
but this one kind of like broke the mold.
I think it's one of those things too. Like I've seen them a million times, man. I just watched them all like a month ago, and I watched Raiders again today just to talk about it, just for fun.
Mhm.
But even though I've seen them 1,000 times, anytime he loses like the hat or the whip, it's like it's like you gotta get that back. It's because those are like extensions of him, and it's like if he doesn't have those things, like what the fuck?
Yeah.
And I think you see that play out in like to something like Toy Story. Woody's, where's my hat? He
Mm.
or he throws his hand back to grab the hat. It's yeah, it's kind of that trickle down. But all that stuff is such. Again, we talked about this with certain films, but it's such a tightly wound package that if any part was missing, like the hat, like the jacket, like
Yeah.
the music, it's just not the same thing
No.
at all. It's just, it really is such a fusion of these great ideas and these great um, different artistries. Like the music, the costume, the visuals of him, the silhouette, just all of that stuff together. Man, creates this unbelievable iconic thing that is going to live on forever.
Mhm.
But talking about the music, the score, so in the VHS episode, Pete, you talked about it because you said it's the most identifiable music. I don't know if I say it right, but um, don't you think it's kind of omnipresent in the movie? It's you always have music. It's something that, because as I said, I didn't grow up with this movie, so I knew the music before, but I didn't know it was so present in the movie, and sometimes it kind of bothered me. Maybe it's because it's not as emblematic as it is for you, for me, but I don't know. Sometimes too much music for me. Too much music in this movie.
No, but the point is you knew the music before you knew the movie. And
Yes.
that was the point, was like, this music transcends. It's like everybody knows this music. It is like, so it's just insane, first of all, that like all of this music came out of like the same guy who did the music for Star Wars and all of the Star Wars, and then the same guy who did the music for Jaws and
E.T.
Superman. Yeah, E.T., Jurassic, like, well, most of Steven Spielberg's
Mhm.
entire filmography, but also just all, Home Alone, like all these
Harry
other,
Potter.
yeah, Harry Potter, all these movies, all these scores, all these themes came out of like one incredibly brilliant, gifted, talented, like supreme being. Like John Williams is just, he's from another planet, you know. And that's where he brought this music from, because clearly like we didn't have it and we needed it. But that's what I was getting at with this particular piece of music. I think it's arguably his best and most identifiable, because like I just mentioned like 5 or 6 others, but you knew it before you even saw the film. And that was what I was getting at, is like, you don't need to see these movies to know this music. It transcends the film, was my point.
The cleverness of just in that one scene when they're trying to take the Ark away, and he rides up on the horse and gets into the truck, and then he takes out the guys one by one, and then he goes through the windshield, but then he goes into the truck and comes back. There's like a musicality to that fight sequence. That's an incredible sequence to
Mm-hmm.
tackle. I mean, listen, there's so many iconic things about the opening. Him getting the idol, and the boulder rushing down, and him running out, and and like but that whole sequence is so fucking impressive with the truck. It's just, it really, it's for me, one of the highlights of the movie, and there are a lot of highlights in the movie, but I always love that sequence because it's so impressive.
And what I like the most about this movie also is the fact that, because we talked about the action, the twist, and everything, but the action is not at the expense of the dialogues. I hope you know what I'm saying, but you understand. But that you the dialogues are really great also, and that's not something that you expect, especially nowadays in action movies, because as I think Steve said, it's nowadays it's just when you have actions, it's action for action. You know what I'm saying? So I really enjoyed the fact that you have real dialogues, real character development. At the end of the movie, you really feel like you can connect to Indiana Jones and Marianne, even if it was you just spent 2 hours with them. You know a lot about them, and you can feel what they felt. So it's really well written.
Less than 2 hours. You spent less than 2 hours with them, and you walk away completely satisfied and wanting more.
It's true. Yeah, you want
And you
more.
get
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want more about Marianne and Indiana Jones. You want to know more about them. And I think it was a bit disappointing that the second opus, there is no Marianne in it. Or I don't even think they talk about it. I don't, oh, maybe at the beginning, but the fact that there is another woman, even if I really like this character, yeah, that's something you feel that something is
Well,
missing in the second one.
the second one takes place before Raiders. Temple of Doom is like the year before, when they put the date
Oh,
up on
yes, you're right.
the
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
beginning of the movie.
Mm.
And I kind of liked that, because yeah, it was another carryover from the James Bond. It's like there are the Bond girls and there are the indie girls. And yeah, and it just adds to his like kind of globetrotting, like cavalier kind of persona. But yeah, I that never bothered me. I always thought that was pretty cool, because then if it was all the same characters again, it would maybe become a little stale. It would lose some of its energy.
Mhm.
And like, but I like how they can come back. How Sala comes back throughout the series, and even Marion comes back throughout the series, but she's not always there. I personally would have liked to have seen Short Round again, because I love that little guy.
Yeah, I loved it too.
You know,
Yeah.
I know Anne
Absolutely.
hates kids in movies, but you got to say Short Round is
No,
really,
but this one
really
is so
kind of
cute.
superior.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll tell you, you and we had talked about this when we talked about Rushmore, how when the movie's over, you feel uplifted in a way that not many movies make you feel uplifted. Indiana Jones is another one that makes me feel that way. Like I immediately want to put on the next one,
Mm-hmm.
and I just like the music and just the overall feeling and the hopefulness. And even though Indiana Jones at the end of Raiders is upset with how things turn out and where the arc goes, but you still have that feeling of like that music comes in, bum, 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 and it just builds. It's like, yeah, and it's like there'll be another adventure, and then it's you feel good about it.
Yeah, there's a sense of closure at the end, and I really think a big part of it is because like at the end of it all, he has Marion.
Hmm.
He doesn't go home empty-handed. Like
Right.
he's got the girl, and if nothing else, they reconnected and they worked out some of their problems. So it's like, who can't identify with that? And it's like, I can't identify with going after priceless artifacts, but I can identify on a personal connection with this character, and like a personal conquest or whatever it is, like he's so much more relatable because of
Hmm.
that relationship and because of ending on that point. And it's funny because that scene with Indy and Marion was actually added after the fact. It was in the script, but they didn't film it, and they showed a cut of the film to the people involved. And Marcia Lucas, George Lucas's ex-wife, who is a very fine editor, she won the Oscar for editing Star Wars, and she edited a few of Martin Scorsese's earlier films. She said, "Where's the scene with Marion?" And Spielberg and Lucas, they were like, "Well, we didn't need it, so we didn't film it." And she's like, "You need that scene. Go film it right now. It just stops. The character just stops. He gets defeated and he stops. Go film that scene. Are you stupid?" And so Marcia Lucas was the voice of reason and the insight on just that right piece of punctuation at the end of that story. Because if it just went from Indy in the boardroom to closing up the arc,
Hmm.
I don't know if it would have resonated the way that it does.
Yeah, because if you feel like he lives to fight another day,
Yeah.
which is good. But in talking about the writing, the exposition in this is handled beautifully. When Brody brings him in, to talk to the two gentlemen from the government about this mission, the way they lay it out is super simple. It's very clear, and it's in a
But
fun way.
it's so engaging too. Like I remember like when I was in 7th grade and I was watching, I was like on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, like you're learning something.
Yeah, I was like learning like actual history about the
Yeah.
Ark of the Covenant. I was like, wow, because I didn't, read the Bible. Like now I know, like, oh yeah, Book of Exodus, the second half of that gives you like crystal clear instructions on how to build your own ark.
Hmm.
you
Yes.
know?
But yeah, you feel like
And
you're learning stuff. It's engaging. And the entire time, and that could be the worst part of the film, right? Is getting the exposition out.
yeah, well, because they set up the government stooges as the audience, and now Indiana Jones is educating you, and who doesn't want to attend that lecture,
Right. There's even the subtleties in this, and how when he's not wearing the fedora and the jacket, when he's the teacher, when he's Professor Jones, he's he's still the same guy, but he's not that guy. But when he puts on that hat, it's like the switch goes on, and it's like the adventure of him comes out. And so it's like the academic is when he's at the suit. And even the way he talks to the students, he's a little more reserved. But then once he talks to the government guys, he starts. It's that gap between the two, where
Yeah,
he's still Dr. Jones, Professor Jones, but then he's becoming Indy because he's getting passionate about what he's talking about.
yeah,
And then he's waiting for Brody to give him the news, like, "Are we going to do this thing?" And then he's packing the pistol, and the
yeah.
whip. So it's like I like how you see the gradation of the character come, just build through that exposition. Also, it's really well done.
Yeah, it made me thought of Superman for me at the same, with or without the glass. You see, it's the same guy, but it's not the same guy. So yeah, I had the same feeling. But also the cinematography, it's something really. You have so many iconic shots in this movie. My favorite one is probably during the intro sequence when Indiana Jones is thinking about how much the statuette weight to replace it with a sandbag,
Uh-huh.
and the light in
Yeah.
this scene is phenomenon. I mean, I really love it. So I'm sure there is a lot to say about the cinematography. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a beautifully shot film, and it's crazy too, just because of the you know, there's some throwback technique, but there's also some modern technique, and then there's, just the way it all blends together and how it's used to tell the story as well. Like, in addition to the exposition, in addition to the dialogue, just visually, you could you could turn the audio off and still follow this movie, because of the way it's set up visually, and even just some of the shots. I love the shot. This one just popped into my head as we're talking about it, but when the monkey eats the bad date
Hmm.
and he drops dead, and they
Oh,
just show like the overhead and the fan blades are going through it's like, something's wrong. You don't need the dialogue to convey that the monkey has died. He's not sleeping, it's just because it's like from that high angle. It's like, yeah, that's so effective.
Yeah. In both Star Wars and in Raiders specifically, he has a very strong-willed woman playing opposite him, and how he responds to those things. Han Solo and Dr. Jones are completely different. And that's such a nice thing to do, and it's hard to do when you're playing it when you're playing. I mean, he's playing a character, but it's a close to as a real person character, not like a character actor. He's not playing a caricature type of a thing. So to do that with two very good actresses who are both strong-willed characters and have it play the way you need it to play is a very impressive thing. Also, when the student has "love you" on her eyes, his reaction to that is like, "Oh shit!" It just catches him off guard. So for him to play those different aspects of the character, and then when he's alone with Marion on the ship, and he's like, everything hurts, and he's they're having that really beautiful moment together, that romantic moment, how he plays that. So there's a lot of range and a lot of texture in what Harrison Ford brings to the table for this character.
Well, and I don't want to be the bad guy here. Throw him under the bus for being, mass murderer, but he's also kind of a pedophile, honestly, if you think about it, considering his background with Marion. And, it's like, how many years difference is there between them? And she's like, I was a child. It was wrong and you knew it. Da, 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 da. It's like, what the fuck happened between them? So here we
Well,
are. Like, we're cheering and rooting for this guy who's just killing people left and right and raping young girls. And it's like,
let's pump the
oh,
brakes there. I don't know if that's
well,
if that's the extent of it. Also, what
well,
year was it? People got married really early back in the
yeah,
day.
well, okay. But no, but if you think about it, it's like, all right, yeah, like, she was probably definitely a minor. So it's just interesting, like how, but that's a credit to how good his fucking performance is, because it's like, he can do no wrong. You're on his side no matter what. Like, let's go,
Yeah,
like, you want him in your corner, or you're in his corner. Like, it's just funny when you read between the lines, or like look at all the cracks or the imperfections. It's like, there's some interesting stuff going on there with Indiana Jones and his history, And I've actually read that there's a deleted scene before Marcus Brody comes to visit him at the house. He's in his robe because he's actually being romantic with a student. And they cut that out to keep it more focused on the adventure aspect of the story. But he was supposed to be more of like a playboy, kind of James Bondish
hmm
character, and they reduced that to favor the academic side of him.
I think that's a smart move.
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. Cause then when it gets to the stuff with Marion, it's like, oh shit, yeah, this guy has a problem.
Hmm.
But when you go over it and you stay focused on the archaeology and the history and everything, and
Hmm.
the pursuit, and then it's like, okay, yeah, no, we're on his side. Yeah, he's gonna bust some heads. All right.
Yeah, but just it's such a nuanced character and performance.
And I
And
love when she cracks him when she
yeah,
first sees him. You know, it's like she just damn near dislocates his jaw. So it's like you get it right away, but then like there's just such great chemistry between Harrison Ford and Karen Allen and Indian Marion, however you want to look at them, you know, as their characters or their actors. Like they really did a great job. I would really be interested to have seen some more of what Tom Selleck was doing because he had the part, you
yeah,
know. He had it and they wouldn't let him out of his contract. So I would really like there's some of that screen test footage that's on like the DVDs and you can find it on YouTube and stuff, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of just
bring
what
to the
he was
table.
doing with the character. And I remember reading, I think for Indiana Jones Part 4 cuz that was in development for like 2 decades.
Hmm.
And I remember early on in the late 90s seeing that there was going to be a story where Tom Selleck was Indiana Jones's brother.
Oh,
And that
interesting.
would have been super cool.
Mhm.
And then,
Yeah. I
then we got
think I think Frank Darabont wrote that script and it was going to be Indy and his brother.
that's interesting.
Yeah, and George Lucas was like, "No, we're not doing that. Think of something else." And they came up with Crystal Skull.
About Marianne, because in your VHS beat, you said that she's not a damsel in distress. True, she's not, but she's always in trouble, and so I was kind of pissed off with her because every time she's in the scene, she's gonna be in trouble at the end. So, but what I loved about this character is, I guess she's the representation of a modern woman in the 80s. She's independent. She has a an impressive capacity for alcohol. Apparently, that's something that shows she's modern. I don't know. And I like the fact that she's not the most beautiful woman of the 80s for sure, but she is so charming and she's cute. But I love the fact that they didn't try to have a objectified woman. I don't know if you say that, but someone who, like, you compared with James Bond, and sometimes I feel that way for the James Bond girl. Sometimes she's just a beautiful
Yeah.
plastic, but I think it's a shame that
Yeah.
um in order to portray a woman as strong and independent, um she has to be saddled with masculine typical attitude, like, as I said, impressive capacity for alcohol. I think that wasn't a good choice. I, I mean, they could have put in light her intelligence more. I feel that way. And use it as a strategy thing, something strategic, instead of showing that she's independent, she's strong and everything. I don't know. I think the female audience could have relate more to her if she had more a clever side. You know what I'm saying?
If you really I just think about this for a second, she owns the bar, so she sells them all those drinks, and then she bets them that she could outdrink them. So she takes their money again. So she's got a
Yeah.
nice little racket going on there.
Yeah, but I think she has her cuz if she's just a female clone of Indiana Jones, that doesn't really do anything. She has her own different skills and she uses them like the drinking you under the table thing. You know, she starts playing Belloc, like, so we as the audience, we're in on it. We know like she can hold her liquor like better than probably most people, you know. In her first scene, her first shot, she's like out drinking a guy who probably weighs like 3 times her weight, you know.
Yeah.
So clearly that it's neat how they like worked it in and came back around, and like you think like, oh, she's gonna get away, and then she runs into Tote. And
Yeah,
then he does that thing with the hanger that's just weird, but it works.
yeah,
And it's a recycled joke from 1941 that didn't work, but this time it works because he's so spooky.
yeah.
Like there was just where I want to go back to the casting for a minute. Yeah, because we're talking about Marion now and Karen Allen, she's great. I think she was perfectly cast for all the reasons that you mentioned, Anne, and a whole lot more, because if you look at, her other work, specifically behind me, I've got Animal House and Starman. And if you want to see a really great performance from her, you watch Starman from 1984, directed by John Carpenter, starring Jeff Bridges. She's fantastic in that film, but she's great. Paul Freeman, I gave shout out in the video to The Long Good Friday, and I was just, so happy to see him like in that movie because I only knew him as Belloc, really. And from Hot Fuzz, he's the priest in the town, but he's a British character actor and a stage actor, so I don't get to see him in a whole lot of things. Like, you got to seek out his filmography. It's not like you're going to pick up a random movie at the video store and he's going to be in it, like Harrison Ford has his own shelf, his own section, but Paul Freeman, you got to dig for that guy. And he totally delivers in this movie, as like the champagne villain, like, just like going toe to toe with Indy and outsmarting him. And how great is it that he's French, Anne? Is he a credit or what?
Yeah, he has the charm, but he also has the arrogance of French people, so I didn't really like it.
But the way you said that, and the way, yeah, like, I think it's authentic. I think he comes across, and I think he does a great job. But yeah, and John Rhys-Davies, I mean, we talked about him when we talked about Lord of the Rings. Of course, he was Gimli in here. The fact that he's in these like two incredible franchises, these like borderline immaculate films, like, and of course, because he's a great actor. Again, he's another like stage actor. He has this great presence, and he gives a brilliant performance because he's funny. He's sympathetic.
Mm-hmm.
He brings a lot to the film in terms of just an insight into Indiana Jones, like as an extension of Indiana Jones. It's like, this is the company he keeps. What a solid dude. Like, I want Sala on my team.
Yeah, like you can't ask for a better, I can't call him a sidekick, but you can't ask for a better friend to have in a tight spot, or to come through for you, or to, to help you get someplace or get something you need. I mean, the guy is just like,
and he's got like 9 kids, but he's out there like risking his neck for his buddy. It's like, hell yeah. But yeah, again, I mentioned like Danny DeVito was Spielberg's first choice. Like, how different would this movie be with Danny DeVito as Sala? I mean, the way he was written in the original script was a short Egyptian. And what was the other movie we were talking about with Danny DeVito where he was almost cast?
I don't remember.
Oh, it was a couple of movies ago. Vizzini.
Yes.
In The Princess Bride, he was almost Vizzini, the Sicilian. And it's like,
he would have lent himself to that better than I think this, but both of the correct choices.
I think it would have been interesting because, again, and as I mentioned, like Steven Spielberg, he always makes these very interesting choices outside of his star. Mm-hmm. He always peppers the supporting cast with these very interesting flavors. And so I don't think that Danny DeVito would have misfired, but I think John Rhys-Davies like explodes as the character.
He's such a big booming, singing in the middle of the street on top of his lungs, and such a jolly guy. And even just that great moment where Indy throws the date, the poison date up in the air, and he snatches it before Indy
I don't see
it.
Danny DeVito making that catch. He'd have to jump off the ottoman or something. No offense, I love him, but it would have been a different movie. He wouldn't have done that big singing thing. Like, he would have done different things. They would have found stuff for him, and he would have delivered, is what I'm saying.
Romancing the Stone.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's your favorite scene of this one?
I do love the Well of the Souls, that whole sequence, and I'm no fan of snakes, let alone 7,000 snakes. But that sequence is so good because, again, it's set up in the beginning and then it comes back around, and it's almost blindsiding. Like, you don't necessarily expect it to that extreme. Like, oh, well, yeah, maybe he'll see a snake again later in the movie, but he opens it up and says, snakes. Why'd it have to be snakes? What a great line. you know, and then Sala comes over with the joke, asps, very dangerous. You go first. And like the look that he gives him, like from that point on to like that whole sequence, like I was on the edge. I'm always on the edge of my seat during that sequence. I think more so than the truck, you know, that whole Well of the Souls. It's just, wow.
And one of the most striking shots for me every time I see that is when they throw Marion in and her shoe falls and the snake goes through the toe of the shoe.
Oh yeah. Or just when they just throw her in, it's like, oh my God.
Without a net. Yeah.
You know what scene I also really like? That's the thing about this movie too, is like there's all these like just little moments that are throughout, you know? So like to pick a favorite scene is really kind of tough. It's really, yeah, you got to pick a sequence. You know, like Anne loves the opening sequence, as do I, but I also love the Well of Souls sequence. Steve loves the truck sequence. But if we're talking about a little scene, like a legitimate scene, I love the scene with Indy and Marion when they're on the ship and he's looking in the mirror at his like battered and broken body. And then she turns the mirror and like cracks him and he lets out that yell and they just cut away to like the wide shot of the ship. And she's like, did you say something? And, you know, and then they have their little tit for tat. And, you know, it's like, God damn it, where doesn't it hurt? You know, that whole scene. And he's too exhausted to be romantic. You know, I love everything that comes out about their chemistry in that scene and everything that comes out about their characters in that scene.
Yeah. You think about the legacy of this, you know, film. You get stuff down the road like the Mummy movies of Brendan Fraser. You get stuff like National Treasure.
Yeah.
Fucking Tomb Raider, the video game, you know, would not be a thing. Temple Run was basically Indiana Jones, you know, so you see that stuff trickle down. And even for my money, I remember the first time I saw Pirates of the Caribbean, the original, I was like, man, this gives me Raiders of the Lost Ark vibes.
Yeah.
So it's got quite the legacy, and Indiana Jones will live on forever.
That'll about do it for us here today at the Visually Hidden Selects podcast. We will be discussing a completely different film next time, so make sure you head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe so you don't miss any future selections. You can catch Stephen Bendler over at Steve's Pop Culture Corner on Instagram. Anne and I, of course, are also on Instagram as well as Letterboxd, so you can follow us over there and find out what we've been watching and see what we think. And until next time, we're just making this up as we go.